All right, hello, hello. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to start today's webinar. Now I'll open the chat as well. Hello, hello. Perfect. So you typing hello means I don't need to ask whether you can hear me or not. I'm pretty excited about this week's webinar because we're going to try something new. If you've noticed, Ashton Marozov posted about another webinar that I'll be doing at the weekend. It'll be very similar. We've had a lot of development in the past week with all our materials and everything. Just like you, we're adapting a lot of our materials to teaching online. A lot of the materials were already adapted, but not everything. Initially, we were teaching both offline and online. At the moment, we're only teaching online. And there are a lot of things that require fine-tuning. And what's going to be new, so you know that at the moment, because of the difficult situation around the world, we've given all our materials, there's no subscription at the moment on our website. It's all for free. Everybody gets free full access. As you know, you noticed last week, there were 2 nights where we had trouble with connection. So it is expensive for us and we're doing our best to keep that up for as long as possible. A neighbor has decided to start drilling right now, which is great. But so we're trying to do that for as long as possible, but yes, it is a bit costly. But we figured out a system for next week, so we're going to keep the subscription at the lowest possible. In the meantime, what we've been doing with Tom is prepare a whole series of lesson plans to add to our website. So you know that on the website you can find here loads of different types of exercises. P1, P2, P3. A P1 is a very basic exercise like all the fill in the blanks that we usually get from our textbooks. It's just really to check understanding of the student. P2s are activities to automate. Those are drilling activities. Usually cards based on time and to push students to say the same thing again and again correctly and to build those reflexes. I need to do the same thing. I'm learning Russian. I need to do the same thing in Russian because in Russian there are cases. There are no cases in English. There's no logic in English behind cases. It's very difficult to grasp. And it's one thing for me to understand the difference between genitive case, accusative, prepositional, but that helps my accuracy, but it doesn't especially help my fluency. If I want to be able to speak Russian fluently, I need to be able to automatically pick a case. And that's not going to happen if I'm still thinking about which, so I'm sending it to someone. So, so it's the dative case because it's to someone. No, I can't think that way when I'm speaking because it's a waste of time. I'm not speaking Russian fluently in that case. So with my teacher, I have cards, for example, with prepositions. К чему, с кем, things like that. And she'll drill with me those cases so that they're automatic. Same thing in learning English and teaching English. Those are what we call P2 activities, automate activities. P3 in production, those are speaking activities to test the fluency, test the skill. And there are a lot of other categories, chants for pronunciation, energy boosters to change the energy level and things like that. What is new, what I really want to show you, projects for task-based approach, project-based learning, really, really good. But today I wanted to point out this. So we've started developing these lesson plans. These are going to be detailed lesson plans with links, direct links to activities to teach online. And we're starting right now with mainly grammar topics, but we are going to expand to a lot of other topics. The whole idea here is really to give you lesson plans that are ready to go with direct links to the activities that you need. You don't need to follow these lesson plans. These are just the way we would teach these things. You've already got 3 lesson plans on present perfect. That's what I'm going to do with Artyom Morozov this weekend, and 1 on the second conditional. And we're going to continue adding and adding to that. And these come with a lot of new activities. Let's look at lesson 1, present perfect explains now. So, I love teaching this. Why? Because honestly, present perfect is often something that confuses students. It's even confusing in textbooks. I have the impression in some way that the experts, the textbook industry, have given up trying to explain present perfect in a good way, because I don't see any good explanations out there. Tom and I, we approach any lesson in the same way. We are going to marry accuracy and fluency. Our students need to speak English both accurately and fluently. And when it comes to grammar, that means that we need to find good grammar explanations that help fluency. There are 3 criteria that are very easy, and I highly recommend remember these, and you'll be able to quickly understand if a grammar explanation is going to help your students' fluency or not. A grammar explanation should first of all be clear. If it's unclear, the students don't understand it. I will always remember the unfortunate time when I was going to teach. I was teaching past simple, past continuous to a pre-intermediate group, and it was at the very beginning of my teaching experience. So I just trusted that the book knew better than me. I trusted it was, if I remember correctly, it was straightforward or it was face-to-face. The lesson was not bad in itself, but the grammar explanation that was in the textbook literally said something like this: past continuous is a long action that is interrupted by another action. And when I first looked at the definition, again, I trusted these are experts writing these textbooks. They should know what they're talking about. This must be a good explanation, and my students are going to understand it. What pre-intermediate student knows the word interrupt? Very, very few. I gave the definition in my class, and I immediately saw the faces of my students just go. They all needed to translate and check the meaning of this word, which means that the first criteria, a good definition, a good explanation should be clear. It wasn't clear. It caused more questions than it brought answers. They needed to look up the word interrupt. Then they asked me, Antoine, what is a long action? Is it 1 hour? Is it 3 years? Is it 10 billion years? Up to you. You decide what is long based on the context. That is not a clear definition, which means that my students are going to have questions. So criteria number 1, a good explanation needs to be clear. Criteria number 2, it needs to be consistent. Exceptions are not here to confirm the rule. If my explanation is not consistent, in some cases it doesn't work, then I shouldn't give it to my students. I shouldn't give it to my students. Thinking off the top of my head, the good old textbook definition of past perfect, for example, that past perfect is an action that happened before another action in the past. Technically, they're not wrong. But there's a big difference between technically not being wrong and technically being right. It's not wrong. All past perfects are actions that happen before another action in the past, but they're not right. That's always what happens, because most of the time we just tell stories only using past simple and putting everything in chronological order. So the definition is not consistent. Why do we use it sometimes? Why do sometimes we put something before? We stress that it happened before. And why do we sometimes do it in chronological order? Again, that definition from the textbook is not consistent, which means that students will not fully understand it. In this case, I find there are two scenarios usually. Either students avoid it. They saw an exercise that it's not consistent, this definition is not consistent, so they avoid it, they never use past perfect in their speech. Or if they didn't notice it was inconsistent and they practiced it very well, they will tend to not avoid it, but overuse it. I've been in those situations when testing new students who wanted to have lessons with me. And I asked them, what did you do at the weekend? Antoine, you know what I did at the weekend? Well, I went shopping. Oh, well, actually, before that, I had lunch and I had a shower and I had talked with my mom on the phone and I had done this and I had done that. Technically, according to the definition that was in the textbook, they're speaking correctly, but they're not, because the definition is not consistent. The definition is not consistent because of the third point. The third point is as important as the first two. So remember, a good explanation is clear, absolutely clear. There are no words in the definition or the explanation that the students don't know. It needs to be drilling. It needs to be consistent. It always works. If not, the students need to know about the exceptions. Last, but not least, it needs to show necessity. I like to always remind my students that if something is not useful in a language, it disappears with time. Present perfect doesn't exist in English just because Shakespeare thought, hey, I'm going to annoy all those students in Russia and they're going to have to pass their yig and they're going to be tested on present perfect. Present perfect is not evil. Present perfect exists, therefore there's a need for present perfect. Same thing goes with every tense that there is, every word that there is in any language. If a word becomes obsolete, it disappears. People stop using it. So that is very, very important. We need to understand that a grammar definition, a grammar explanation needs to provide necessity, needs to show necessity to our students. And that is where we are going to dig deep in these lesson plans. So present perfect, you already see the definition. Present perfect explains now. The lesson plan is very straightforward. It forwards you to first teaching tips. So you'll have a little video that will show you how we teach present perfect explains now. The video is not going to be with me, it's going to be with Tom, but you'll see he'll go over step by step every way you can teach present perfect explains now, through examples, through self-discovery, but also through teacher-led explanations, depending on what is best for you. So the definition present perfect explains now is very useful because basically present perfect is used in English when we want to give hints about now, when we want to imply things. I've lost my keys. I don't just say I've lost my keys for the fun of it. When I say I've lost my keys, I'm either expressing the fact that I can't get home, maybe I'm asking for your help, I'm hoping that you'll offer some help, maybe I'm looking for them right now. There are a lot of different scenarios. I haven't eaten much today. I might be hinting, implying that you should offer me some food. I might be hinting, guys, it's already 1:15. I haven't eaten much right now, so I hope you'll forgive me. I'll have a little snack during the webinar. I hope it won't be too impolite. it really, present perfect always, it's something that happened in the past, but the implications are now. So we're going to do exactly that with our students. There's, of course, second part, a basic practice and homework exercise. These are fill in the blanks, things like that. But I want to show you the most important way for our students to grasp this idea of present perfect explains now. It's the best way for them to understand the whole point of speaking sometimes in present perfect, not in past simple. So again, this activity is called Make Assumptions. This activity is made to emphasize the idea that present perfect explains now. Whenever we hear a sentence with present perfect, that person makes certain assumptions. For example, if you hear, I've already eaten lunch, you assume that the person isn't hungry. Unless, of course, they contradict themselves. I've already eaten lunch, but I can't resist chocolate. You've just offered them a chocolate cake. Oh, I've already eaten lunch, but I can't resist chocolate. In all these cases, the present perfect is loaded with implications. And we're going to do exactly that. You're going to put students in pairs or small groups, and you'll see that in the document, you're going to have cards. So you cut them out if you're playing offline. You cut them out and everything. If you're playing online, you just type them in the chat one by one. For each card, students are going to make assumptions. This is really a great activity for students to start absorbing the why present perfect. They're going to make assumptions. They're going to make assumptions based on these present perfect sentences without making their own present perfect sentences. So they're really going to play with it. I haven't eaten breakfast. What could you assume? Antoine said he hadn't eaten breakfast. Well, maybe he's hungry right now. Maybe he'd like a break. Maybe he's looking at your breakfast with hungry eyes. I've never had a pet. What can you assume about the person? Maybe the person is allergic. Maybe the person doesn't like animals. Maybe the person isn't allowed an animal. Parents or wife, husband, there are different assumptions you can make. What's sure is that that person probably doesn't know the right way to bathe a pet, to feed a pet. So you see, there are quite a lot of assumptions you can make for each card. I've been listening to this song all day. Depending on the intonation of the person, I can either assume that this is this person's favorite song at the moment. Like they can't stop listening to it. They love it. They absolutely love it. Maybe they just discovered it. Maybe they just heard it at a concert. They were just moved by the concert and they can't stop listening to it. The intonation might also be negative. I could also assume that this song has been driving this person crazy all day. You know those songs that you hear once on the radio, you hate it. It's not a good song, but for some reason it's just stuck in your head. Maybe this person is just sick and tired of this song. This is a great activity. I highly recommend it. If ever in the future you are going to teach present perfect, please use these activities. You'll be amazed at how fast your students are going to grasp present perfect like never before. This is really what native speakers do when they hear present perfect. We read between the lines. Remember that English culture is not a direct culture. Watch Downton Abbey if you're not sure. See how those people used to always imply things. They never openly talked about their feelings or asked for help directly, things like that. It was always implied through language like this. And present perfect is one of the best for that. There's loads of implications in present perfect, and when native speakers hear something in present perfect, they make assumptions. They read between the lines, and there are loads of activities like that. I think we've added 5 or 6 different make assumptions, new activities. Use these cards and get your students to just make assumptions. For now, they're not trying to use present perfect. They're just trying to read present perfect when they hear it. I don't know, just randomly. Our train hasn't moved for 10 minutes. Assumptions. The person is worried. Okay, there might be some repairs on the tracks. There might be a very serious situation in the city. My head has been killing me all day. Maybe that person had a rough night, a tough night. Maybe that person had a bit of a too good a night. Maybe that person is very nervous. Maybe that person is sick. So just make assumptions with your students and let them explore this. So this is called make assumptions. You'll have, this one is B2 plus, and you see it's number 1. You'll have loads of other ones. So that's our approach really with present perfect. Just go, start with making assumptions, get your students to feel this subtlety about present perfect, and gradually open them up to this present perfect explains now. Every time you hear present perfect, make an assumption about right now. Next step, solidifying the concept. Let's get students speaking now. So this is the first step, okay? First lesson on present perfect, remember? We're going to play a game called Explain the Feeling. And it's going to work in a similar manner to make assumptions, but actually the opposite. Instead of giving our students a present perfect sentence, I hope, can you hear me well when there's the drilling? Is it fine? I hear it very loudly, but I don't know how you hear me. Should I just stop talking when there's drilling? It's okay. So, explain the feeling. Instead of giving our students now a sentence in present perfect, we're going to try to get them to make sentences in present perfect. And the most basic thing you can do with present perfect explains now is simply start with feelings. We're going to give our students a feeling, and they're going to try to explain it using a present perfect. So look at the procedure. Put the students in pairs or in small groups. Student A chooses a card without telling anyone else in the group. For example, nervous. A makes a sentence with present perfect that explains the feeling. I haven't studied for a very important test. Partners try to guess which of the feelings in the chart A is explaining. Once they guess, of course, you move on to the next one. There you go. So in this one, for example, you have nervous, surprised, scared, happy, excited, bored, hot, confused, in love. Aww. Let's try that one as an example. Let's say I'm the student, I picked that last card, in love. How could I imply that I'm in love using present perfect? Well, I've just met this girl, you know, and she's nothing like any girl I've ever met. We've never had a fight. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever met. And you see, I'll continue making sentences like that. Implying, trying to show that I'm in love. I've already asked her out on a next date. I've actually looked at rings, engagement rings, things like that. I'll continue until you guess, Antoine, you're in love. Yes, your turn. And you choose bored. You follow my wonderful in love explanations with a bored explanation. Antoine, you've talked about this before. I've never been on such a long webinar. I've heard you say the same thing for the past 15 minutes. And you're just going to continue third. present perfect examples like that until we guess. You're bored. It's loads of fun, and again, there are more than one of these explain the feelings. This one is for B2+, that's number 1. You'll find some for C1, for example, that are going to be a bit higher level. The feelings are going to be a bit trickier. There were some tricky ones here. I mean, how would you imply that you're hot? Well, we haven't opened the window. We've left the heating on all night. There have been 2-3 groups before us in this very room. So hot is quite simple. What about confused? How could you imply that you're confused with a present perfect sentence? I've never been in this situation before. I wouldn't have expected that. So you're using perfect tenses. And the higher the level, the more you can play with different perfect tenses. It can be present, but it can also be past, future, and you can also play with the modals. So this is explain the feeling. And here you have a solid lesson 1. So lesson plan, we put lesson plan means 45 minutes. Why? Because, well, most of the time lessons are longer than an academic hour, of course, but the academic hour is a good measure. So for example, if I have a lesson of 2 academic hours, I'll usually have a lesson plan of 1 academic hour on developing some new language. It can be grammar, vocabulary, functional language, things like that. And maybe the second academic hour, I'm going to focus maybe on exam preparation, pronunciation, or maybe just a lot of fluency activities to develop and continue focusing on what we've just learned in the past couple of weeks. So that's why a lesson plan for us is 1 academic hour. But you can combine them to the different lesson plans. So let's come back. Let me show you more activities for present perfect, because really we've been loading them right now. By the way, highly recommend these activities as well for exam preparation, because Ogeyege is still happening. You want baccalaureate in France as well, same thing. You want to use these. These are going to help students really feel present perfect like never ever before. Lesson 2. So this wouldn't be the second academic hour. I would give my students time to digest the first information, come back maybe a week later with a second academic hour on present perfect. So of course, remind students of the concept. Again, you have the video. Reminder of the concept really means just, I put the form on the board. So present perfect, I would just put have, has, plus V3 on the board, and I'll write next to it, explains now. No need for anything more. If the first lesson went well, there's no need to reteach it. I don't want to confuse my students. I would only go more in details or bring more examples if I felt that at the first lesson it didn't work. My students were confused. And you see, second lesson, I'm going to continue making assumptions. This is one of the best activities you can do for present perfect with your students. Continue making assumptions. So bring them new cards. Look at number 2. He has been shouting at me all day. What can we assume? Well, if he's my boss, I'm probably going to get fired. He's been shouting at me all day. If it's my dad, he's very disappointed in me. He's been shouting at me all day. For sure, that person, dad, friend, or whoever, is angry with me. Should we assume that I've done something wrong? Well, you never know. He might be shouting for no reason, right? But we can assume there's a high probability that I've done something wrong. I've done something to upset him. I've done something that is causing this person to shout at me. There's also the last possible case of that person just being a crazy person. Or drunk. I've studied Spanish for a month. Well, I can assume that you can say basic things like hello, goodbye, thank you, but we're not going to have a very deep conversation in Spanish, of course. I can assume that you're interested in Spain in some way. Maybe you want to go there on holiday. Maybe you might plan to go study there one day or to work there, to immigrate there. I don't know. Maybe you're just interested in Spanish because you've got a Spanish boyfriend or girlfriend. It's also a possibility. What's for sure is that you've studied Spanish for a month. Same thing, go through all these cards, and it's great practice for your students. Just sit down, brainstorm together, put weak and strong students together, really, because they need to play with this. They need to make assumptions and understand what they're doing, how they're reading between the lines with these present perfect examples, because then it makes it all more easier and all more logical to use present perfect well. So next, instead of explaining the feeling, we're going to explain the situation. So, just like the feeling cards, it's the opposite to making assumptions here, basically. The students have not a feeling, but a situation. They want to imply it to the others. So they're going to have to make sentences. It doesn't all have to be in present perfect. Let them be natural, okay? If they make sentences some sentences that are not in present perfect, it's absolutely fine. We don't only use present perfect to imply things. So as you see in the procedure, you put students into pairs or small groups. Student A chooses one of the situation without telling anyone else in the group. A makes a sentence with present perfect that explains the situation. So my friend is angry with me. I haven't called her for 6 months. As partners try to guess which of the situations in the chart A is explaining, you can continue making assumptions like that. So let's look at the situation cards. So my friend is angry with me was the example in the instructions. I'm moving to Italy. Well, I'm moving to Italy. So I've been studying Italian now for 3 months. I've looked at prices of real estate in Italy, and I've added my resume to the Italian headhunter site. I've gone on a few job interviews already with companies in Rome and in Florence. Now, I'll go to Florence. So there you have it. Just a few present perfects, and the students are going to be able to guess, hey, you're moving to Italy. Absolutely, absolutely. His, his wife doesn't want to get a pet. Well, I've been telling my wife I want a dog for ages. I've actually always had a dog, except for when I was living with my wife. I've been showing her cute puppy videos from the internet, but that hasn't changed her mind. Oh, Antoine, your wife doesn't want to get a pet. Exactly. You see the whole point of this activity? Explain the situation. Instead of directly saying, I'm moving to Italy, you're going to imply it. And present perfect is very useful in this case. You see, we've gone from making assumptions, reading present perfect, to using present perfect. Any comments or questions on these activities for now, on this approach? Wait, maybe. No? Okay, everything's clear for now in the chat. Perfect. So we've gone over present perfect explains now, make assumptions, explain the feeling, explain the situation. Now, let's have some speaking practice, right? Now, I really like this activity. It's really loads of fun. Students are going to have a lot of fun with this. In a lot of cases, present perfect is used to boast. Okay, you're explaining now that you're the ideal candidate for the job, that you are that you're the man for her, or you're the woman for him. Things like that. I've done this, I've done that. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to do it soon. Things like that. And we're going to give our students a good opportunity to practice this in this way. It's a lot of fun. This activity is simply called I'm number one. I am number one, right? I'm number one. So we're going to put the students into pairs or small groups. Student A is going to take a card from the best cards. A reads the card aloud and says a sentence in present perfect that supports the fact that they are number one in the way described on the card. For example, they take a card, I'm the worst race car driver. So, yeah, guys, I'm the worst race car driver. I've been in thousands of accidents. And A's partners are going to respond with their own present perfect sentences that refute A's position at the top. So it's a lot of fun because some of the cards are I'm the best at, and some of the cards are I'm the worst at. And students are going to fight to see who is the best at this and who's the worst at that. And so let's say I said, I'm the worst race car driver ever. I've been in thousands of accidents. And you go, what, Antoine? I'm worse than you are. I've never even learned how to drive. At least you can drive and have accidents. I haven't even learned how to drive. And then a third student comes in, you haven't even learned how to drive. And you know what? I'm even worse than you. I'm the worst race car driver. I can't even learn how to drive because I have terrible vision or something like that. So students are going to simply fight over who is number one. Number one can be number one at something good, but also number one at something bad. It's loads of fun. Students have loads of fun with this. I'm the worst at waking up. You know what? I'm the worst at waking up. I'm pretty sure I've pressed on my snooze button like 50 times this morning already. I'm the worst at waking up. Then other students go, you think you're the worst at waking up? I've had days where I didn't even wake up. I slept the whole day, and so on and so forth. You think you're the worst at waking up? I've never woken up without 5 good cups of coffee. Something like that. They're going back and forth like this. It's a battle of wits. A battle of wits to determine who is the best at this thing. I'm an amazing farmer. I hate coffee. I love work. I'm the most irresponsible person you know. Loads of fun. Students really, they have loads of fun with that one. I'm the most irresponsible person you know. You'll be surprised at all the ideas they have to explain how they are irresponsible. And again, I'm number one, like make assumptions, like explain the feeling, like explain the situation. We've already uploaded 3 or 4 different ones. All right? Let's get back to our materials. Look, I'll take lesson plans out of the equation. Remember, this is a good way to filter as well. Remember that here you can filter by date created. That's simply what I did because right now I know we're going to talk about the latest activities. So look, so those are second conditional. I'll show you that later. There's also a lesson plan for second conditional. Here are the lesson plans for present perfect. And there you have it. I'm number one explains now, C1, B2 plus, B1, B2. Oh, the explain game is a lot of fun as well. I'll show you that. You see, explain the situation, make assumptions. There are loads and loads of these activities. Explain game. This is also a great activity for present perfect explains now. Here's the procedure. Split the class into teams, okay? You'll need 3-4 groups to be able to play this game. Which means that you can also have 3-4 just individual students. As I said, if you do not have enough students for groups, you can also have students play as individuals. Group A starts off by taking an explain card out of a stack of cutout cards. If you're online, you just type it in the chat, for example. So here are the explain cards. Number 1, the food is really good. The other groups have 1 minute to come up with a sentence using present perfect that explains or implies the situation on Group A's card. They should write these sentences on a sheet of scrap paper or in the chat or in the answer template. Okay, we provide you with an answer template as well. They have a minute. After a minute, Group A collects all the answers. Group A is going to decide which answer fits best. And here, I highly recommend that you can play this in a lot of different ways. I highly recommend playing on which award you can get. So sometimes you'll award the most logical explanation, sometimes the funniest, sometimes the craziest, sometimes the most serious, sometimes the most efficient. It's a lot of fun. I did once the category with teenagers. They had loads of fun. It's something that, you know, when you impose for them to read a text or listen or watch a video on ecology and things like that, they feel it's very condescending. And they generally kind of, you'll see their faces go like this. Oh, no, yeah, we know. Okay, we should do this, we should do that, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a fan of that approach. I'm more a fan of the approach of allowing students to discover on their own and to think for themselves. And so what we did with this explain game once with teenagers, we simply played the explain game, but we agreed that the people would only be awarded for the most ecological explanation possible. They had loads of fun with that. So that's explain game. Okay, I don't like this book. He's a famous artist. I'm afraid of my neighbor. This is not a safe area of the city. Any present perfect sentence that explains the situation. And then the group in control gives the best, awards the point to the best group, the one they preferred. Any questions, comments so far on present perfect explains now? I'm just checking on the different chats. No questions whatsoever. Okay, a last little thing for present perfect. As we said, this is very important. This is part of our teacher professional development course. 3 criteria for good explanations that work for fluency. They have to be clear. Students need to be able to understand them. They have to be consistent. They need to work. If students find exceptions on their own, they lose confidence in you, in the explanation. It doesn't help their fluency. Clear, consistent, and it needs to show necessity. If students don't understand why we use this tense, then they're never going to fully master this tense. There's a reason why. There might be more than one reasons why. Some tenses have more than one case. But generally speaking, there's a reason why this exists in the language, or else it would have disappeared. The problem with teaching present perfect is, as I said before, I have not seen a single textbook that had a good explanation of present perfect. Present perfect explains now that is entirely Tom and I. We're pretty proud of that. It's really a really solid way of explaining present perfect. But if you're teaching students at schools, private or public, you might have a set course program, a set textbook that you have to go through. And that textbook or that course program is going to teach present perfect a bit differently through timelines, things like that. So it is also a good way to explain present perfect. I'm not opposed to that. It's important to remember, though, that explaining present perfect through timelines, you are giving them a clear and consistent explanation. It's very solid, it's very good, but there's no necessity. The timelines don't give our students the reason why. They don't, it doesn't tell our students when to use it. But nevertheless, timeline matching is a very useful way to teach present perfect following current course programs. I hope in the near future people will hear us out, and I hope that in the future textbooks will be teaching students present perfect explains now. It's that simple. So the timelines are very simple. If you need timelines to teach present perfect, you only need 4 timelines. They're right here before you. Timeline 1 shows you past simple. It's an event that happened in the past at one point. Timeline 2 shows you present perfect. It's also the same event that happened in the same past. The difference is that we don't know when. I have stopped telling my students we don't know when. I've started telling actually my students we don't care when. It's not important. That's not the issue. Timeline 3. It's a longer action in the past, but it's still past simple. You know what? I read a good book at the weekend, but I also lived in Cleveland, Ohio for 7 years, something like that. Cleveland, Ohio for 7 years. 7 years, that's a pretty long time compared to reading a book. Doesn't change, it's still past simple. Timeline 4, now we have a long action, but that continues now. That's present perfect. With these 4 timelines, any example of present perfect or past simple, you can ask your students, just before we continue, match with the timeline. And they're going to see that your definitions are clear and consistent. This always works. I've been here all morning. Which timeline? Timeline 4. Started in the past, continues now. It will probably continue in the future. I've been to Spain 3 times. Timeline 2. Some actions in the past, I don't know exactly when. Okay. I slept for 8 hours yesterday. For 8 hours, we have the length of time, so timeline 3. I find it important to show timeline 3 to students so that they don't overuse past continuous for everything they think is long, because there's no point in using past continuous in these cases. When I was young, I played basketball. When I was young. Timeline 3. I've been working since last night. Timeline 4. Started in the past, continues now. I've eaten breakfast. I haven't eaten breakfast for years. Same thing, timeline 4. At one point, I stopped eating breakfast years and years ago, and I'm still not eating breakfast now. I didn't work yesterday. Timeline 1. I drank coffee an hour ago. Timeline 1. I finished the project. Timeline 1. I have finished the project. Timeline 2. So we have all these examples called timeline matching. And this is a good way to teach present perfect, combining it with what you have in your textbooks and things like that. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice in the chat you were participating. You were trying to guess. Okay. Let's try timeline matching number 2. All right, and this time I'll open the chat and I'll pay attention to you, what you're saying. So timeline word 1. I worked on the project last year. Which timeline? I've been working on the project this year. This week, sorry. I rode horses when I was young. My car broke down this morning. I've tried to call John 3 times. And very quickly, make assumptions. What is the person trying to say? I've tried to call John 3 times. Well, he's obviously desperate to talk to John. He's probably got something important to tell him. John is probably busy right now. There's no answer from him. So you see, you can play these different games with a lot of these activities. We haven't been on holiday for 2 years. Timeline. I've been studying English since I was in school. I didn't see him in the store. I've seen that movie before. I didn't sleep well last night. Ta-da! There you have it. So this is good fun. Timeline matching. It's useful for students if you're using textbooks that explain, that teach present perfect in different lessons. You know, one on for instance, one on past simple versus present perfect, one other lesson on already, yet. Then I recommend the timelines. But if you can, perfect. If you can choose exactly how to teach and everything, I highly recommend. Make assumptions. Present perfect explains now. Make assumptions again, and then open them up. Explain the feeling, explain the situation. I'm number 1. You see that I'm number 1, we have other activities on the database that you could use for this. These are fluency activities called brag. Brag activities are loads of fun. So to brag, yes, to brag is to show off, to say I'm the best at this, I'm the best at that, because that, and it's a great opportunity to use present perfect. So a bit like I'm number 1, the activity brag, you can use any of these. In all these activities, you will find a collection of 6 cards, 6 things to brag about. And the students can do the same thing as we explained in I'm number 1. They can fight over who is the best at that. So in this case, I'll use these cards by, I'm student A, I first take the first card. I'm not afraid of tornadoes. I've gone to the heart of 10 tornadoes already in my life. And remember the whole idea of I'm number 1? The whole idea of that is for you, other students in my group, to try to compete with me. What, Antoine? 10 times? You think you're not afraid of tornadoes? I am really not afraid of tornadoes. I've even flown helicopters in tornadoes just for the fun of it, because that's how much I love tornadoes. And we continue like this. I watch lots of TV. I really watch lots of TV. In the last 48 hours, I've watched TV for 47 hours and 33 minutes. That's how much I watch. That's how much TV I watch. I'm amazing at watching loads of TV. You say, Antoine, it's pretty impressive, Now, I haven't watched as much TV as you in the last 48 hours, but I have to say, I've watched so much TV that I've learned by heart. I don't know. I know everything that the Cherny Urgan has said on TV by heart. You can test me. That's how much TV I've watched, Antoine. And we're just like that, battling to see who's the best at this. It's loads of fun, and this is a short speaking activity that is greatly adapted to that, to getting students to share, speak, play with the language, because it's always crazy situations. They're going to play with the language and they're going to practice. They're really going to develop their ability to use present perfect fluently. The way to find these activities. So exactly the way, there are a lot of different ways. The filters work in different ways. I'll just reset completely. So you see, there are 5 filters, okay? Skill is what kind of skill you're going to be teaching in your lesson. You'll see here that you have the traditional grammar, vocabulary, but you can also be teaching writing skills, okay? Typing skills, soft skills. You can be teaching pronunciation, intonation, business skills, exam preparation. This is where you choose the skill you want to teach. This is where you choose the age range of your students, level of difficulty. This is a type of activity. If we're talking about a P1, just a fill in the blank kind of activity, or a P2, a drilling activity, or a P3 production, a speaking activity. And finally, target language. This is where you can type any target language you are looking for. It can be grammar, okay? So for example, I start typing present, I have all these things. Perfected, present perfect, and I only want present perfect simple. There you go. I choose present perfect simple and I search. Ta-da! It can be vocabulary. Let's say I'm looking for animals. Ta-da! It can also be fluency type activities. As I told you, this activity, I'm number 1, you can also use it with brag. And brag is just a type of fluency activity. There you have it. But you'll find it as well if you look for fluency type activities here. Okay, there are a lot of different fluency activities, of course, but here you have it. Brag is already on the first page. There are 30 pages of fluency activities. So we're lucky B, brag is at the beginning of the alphabet. We found it immediately. And you can fine tune. I highly recommend learning how to fine tune your research, because all these things you see are tags. You see that you can click them. So you can start with a very general thing, okay? Okay, well, grammar. Here I've got every single grammar activity. It's 39 pages. Ridiculous. Let's fine tune. So my students are B1, B2 level. If I just click, if I see the tag B1, B2 in an activity, it adds itself to the filter automatically. Now they're B1, B2, and what am I? No, I don't want to teach them. I'm not teaching them modals. I'm teaching them used to. Okay, I click on used to and boom, it filters more and more. And same thing. If I click on them, they leave. Okay, now I want to teach C1. Okay, C1 grammar. Yes, yes, I wish, but only plus past simple. I don't have past continuous perfect yet. And I go back. Second conditional. There we go. That's what I wanted to teach. Boom. There I have it. I have second conditional activities for C1 level. I want actually activities. I want a review activity. I don't want just second conditional. I want second and third conditional. So I'm going to type on third conditional as well. And now I only have activities of C1 level that include second and third conditional. All right? Last thing for the activities for the filtering, you can also filter here. I like this too. You notice when we looked for fluency activities, boom. I told you we were looking for fluency we were looking for brag. It's a fluency activity, so we were very lucky that because it's filtered by name. But maybe you're looking for, just out of interest, you're looking at the for the latest fluency activities. So date created, you want to filter by date created going down. And there you have it. These are our last fluency type activities created. That's how the filters work. I really wanted to show you that because it makes a huge difference. I admit, honestly, I can prepare for lessons now really rapidly because but it's just because I know that I really master our filtering system. It takes a little bit of playing with, and then you will really quickly be able to do what I just did there, fine tuning. You remember how it worked? It's like I found my fluency activities. Okay, well, these are pretty weak. A0, A1, A2. No, I'm looking for A2, B1. Okay, we filtered. Yes. Now, let's say I'm teaching adult right now, so I only want activities for adults. Boom, I'm filtering it more and more. Perfect. I don't have time for a production. The production is longer than a P3. Your production has preparation time and everything. I just want P3s. Boom. And there you have it. I'm filtering it. Boom, boom, boom. Finding out more and more which activities are going to suit my needs right now. Ta-da! I actually did some of these activities today. So a teacher asked me whether I teach adults or kids. I teach all age groups. I have an individual 8-year-old girl, Alia, for example, on Wednesdays and Fridays. Right now, I just had a lesson with a student. She's still at university, and we did exactly that. We did a few of the present perfect make assumption and explain the situation activities. She loved it. It was great. I have corporate clients, so groups of IT guys, groups of managers, group of directors. I don't have a kids group at the moment. My last kids group ended in December. Now they have another teacher. But yeah, kids, teens, adults, never mind. Do you have any questions, comments on this? On the present perfect explains now approach? What do you think of our idea of adding these lesson plans? Shall we continue? Basically, let us know if you find them helpful. And last thing, yes, about the filters, the system. Any questions, comments on all that? All right, perfect. All right, then we're done for today. I'll send this, I'll get the recording of the webinar and I'll add that to YouTube for everybody who is online. Yes, the certificates. You sent me an email about the certificate. It doesn't depend on me. I've just forwarded that to our director to make certificates. I don't know exactly when they'll be ready, but she just needs to. I remember you said it was very important for your portfolios. Yeah, if you want certificates of webinars, please send me an email. All right. So I'll add the recording to YouTube for those who could not be with us live. And if you've been following news from Artyom Morozov, just for you to know, the webinar that I'll be giving for him this Saturday is going to be pretty much what we've been talking about today, okay? We're the first ones to know. Artyom is great. We really, Tom and I are loving working with him. We're all three of us are from St. Petersburg, so it's actually geographically just very simple, first of all. And second of all, we really teach in similar manners, have similar styles. We have different talents, different skills, I would say. But yeah, we work really well together, so we're having a lot of fun with that. All right, perfect. All right, then it's already almost 10 past 2. I'll wish you a wonderful Thursday. Hopefully spring weather will be back soon. Have a wonderful Thursday and maybe talk to you on Saturday at Artyom Morozov's webinar or at our next webinar. It'll be coming soon. Take care. We'll be talking about other lesson plans and second conditional things like that. All right? Take care. Have a lovely Thursday.